This morning, new surveillance footage of an armed group of men carrying flags emblazoned with swastikas marching through the streets of Columbus, Ohio. The troubling incident happening Saturday afternoon. Each person dressed head to toe in all black, masks concealing their faces. They shouted vile and racist speech against Jews and people of color.
We asked both President Biden and President-elect Trump about the Ohio incident. Biden responded denouncing the incident. We're waiting a response from Trump.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. We've got Kris Goldsmith back, our resident Nazi hunter. And that's no exaggeration, Kris. We just saw these Nazis marching through the streets of Columbus. I think we touched on this in our last conversation. Something has been unleashed. I mean, it was bad enough during the election. It was bad enough during Trump's first term. But when a president-elect who issued a call to arms to a terrorist group from a presidential podium has been validated with a plurality of the American vote, I think it's a permission structure of exactly the wrong kind. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so these hate groups have been operating pretty much in the same way over the last few years. They've become more and more visible because they are getting bigger and they're using more outrageous tactics. So what this hate group, the hate club run by Anthony Altick, is doing is they're basically trying to grab headlines, which they've been really successful about. And I think one of the most frustrating things is that reporters who are covering politics today have not been covering extremism. So they're covering this stuff very irresponsibly. Dana Bash, I think it was on Sunday, went out and said, oh, well, we don't know if they were left or right. They're carrying swastikas. We know where these guys came from. And if one of her producers, which, put the words in the teleprompter for her, if one of her producers just simply did the research and reached out to Task Force Butler, we'd be glad to tell you exactly who these people are. Yes, they have masks, but we infiltrate their organization, so we know what they're doing. And they always brag in the channels that we're in.
In Columbus, a group of neo-Nazis paraded through that city waving swastikas, covering their faces. This is not the first time this sort of thing has happened in Ohio in particular. And of course, it's continuing to spread. We don't know what side of the aisle this comes from. I mean,
we do know who these people are. They are far-right extremists. They are neo-Nazis. They're not college hippies, who have been protesting about Gaza, which is what Dana Bash was trying to imply there, that these things are the same.
Yeah. How do we strike the balance between a sober assessment of the risk and covering what's actually happening with giving them the headlines they want? What's our responsibility here?
Yeah. So these extremist organizations, they are doing everything that they do in public because they want to draw headlines. And with drawing headlines, that earned media is drawing people to their websites, to alternative social media so that they can recruit and they can radicalize. What they're also doing is they're trying to get people like Dana Bash to do this both sidesism thing. And they're trying to get conservatives, Trump Republicans specifically, to come out and defend them. Right. So the reason that Blood Tribe got a whole lot of headlines this summer was because J.D. Vance was repeating their lie about cats and dogs being eaten by Haitian migrants. Right. This group, Blood Tribe, was able to get the president-elect, Donald Trump, to repeat disinformation that came from their group. Right. And what did they do? They got J.D. Vance to come and talk about how, well, yeah, okay, I know those Haitian immigrants are legal according to the Biden administration, but they're not going to be legal to us. So a neo-Nazi organization, through pulling a stunt, going through Springfield, Ohio, waving swastika flags, have achieved their white nationalist dream of getting candidate Vance to say, we're going to make legal immigrants illegal and kick them out of the country. So these guys have achieved everything that they ever dreamed of and more.
It is a weird way to mainstream this kind of hate because you still have the Republican establishment disavowing the symbology and some of the rhetoric, but adopting like the policy prescriptions. In some ways, it's a win-win for these hate groups. They still get to appear fringe and be able to draw in extremists because of that, but they get their talking points into the vice president's mouth.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't agree that they're being disavowed by a broad swath of MAGA Republicans. I think what I saw when it came to Springfield and specifically Blood Tribe is we saw a bunch of Republicans using the same thing that they did for the entire Trump candidacy and presidency of saying, oh, I didn't see the tweet. I don't know what you're talking about. They weren't answering hard questions about swastika flying neo-Nazis. They were instead giving them the same room to operate that they do to Donald Trump, claiming ignorance, which is active support when they're in the roles of government.
It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here to let you know that we'd love to hear from you. Your comments, suggestions, thoughts about future topics and guests. Email us at info@thekenharbaughshow.com and make sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and back to the show. Can you talk about your alliance now, Task Force Butler's alliance with Common Defense, and how that supercharges your mission of ferreting out these hate groups and exposing them for who and what they are?
Yeah, so Task Force Butler Institute is a 2.5. I'm sorry, the dogs are barking. Give me 1 sec to handle this.
Mine is asleep on the stuffed animals.
Guys. So my mailman is my dog's best friend.
Awesome.
He comes and brings treats,
Those were happy
so they
barks.
lose their mind. Yeah, every time they see him, they hear the truck. They know what the exhaust on the mail truck sounds like.
That's great.
So they hear him coming down the block and start losing their minds.
Well, look, I'm going to editorialize here a little bit, but you and I both have dogs because we love dogs, but also they provide a certain measure of security, right?
They do. Yeah. The first time that I was swatted after a bunch of neo-Nazis tried to kill me, it was the dogs who figured out that we were getting swatted before I did. So I'm thankful for their service.
Yes. As am I. Keep them close. I think finish your thought on Common Defense, Task Force Butler, what that means for your combined efforts.
Yeah, so Task Force Butler Institute, we are a teeny tiny organization. As of this month, we now have 2 staff. Despite the fact that we've been a teeny tiny little organization, we've been punching way above our weight class, right? We have helped to facilitate 5 federal lawsuits against hate groups. That includes, there are also state level lawsuits, attorneys general from New Hampshire, which is a Republican, and Massachusetts, which is a Democrat, filing suits against NSC 131, which has really just messed up their membership and put a real cost on being a neo-Nazi. But we've been small, we've been underfunded, we've had virtually no staff and working with a bunch of volunteers. That is changing now. With our partnership with Common Defense, we are going to be drastically expanding our operations. We already operate nationwide in terms of intelligence gathering, but over the next year, we're going to be hiring staff around the country to do in-person ops. And Common Defense is the nation's largest grassroots veterans organization. They have professional organizers in some of the swing states, and we'll be expanding into California. We're going to be pairing an investigator from Task Force Butler with Common Defense's on-the-ground grassroots activists so that we can do threat intelligence, we can do research and investigations into local hate group activity. And then Common Defense, with its much greater membership, can focus on the accountability side. So we gather the evidence and perform the analysis, and Common Defense takes what we've found and demands change from law enforcement, from lawmakers, and from executives around the country.
How can people help? And I know you're going to ask people to donate. We'll make sure to put a link in the show notes, but you need volunteers as well. And I want you to be realistic in expectation setting, because the last time we had you on, we had a flood of inquiries. You're still building up. What are you looking for? What can people expect if they reach out to you?
Yeah, so if people go to taskforcebutler.org and they click the sign up sheet, they'll get in the pipeline. But part of the reason that we're partnering with Common Defense is we simply cannot expand our intelligence team to everyone who wants to join. It takes professional full-time staff to manage, 20 volunteers. We've had hundreds of people try to fill out applications. What we want to make sure that people do is they get active with work that can be done now with Common Defense. That could be doing things like out in the street, going and protesting. We expect, Donald Trump is going to try to use the military to perform ethnic cleansing, right? That's let's call it what it is. He's going to perform ethnic cleansing, trying to use the military. So we'll be doing street actions, like Common Defense will be doing street actions. But there's also stuff for people who are not interested in that kind of stuff. They will train folks how to write letters to the editor, how to perform a press conference, how to engage with the media, and how to engage with our elected officials and encourage them, advocate, so that they do things to protect our local communities while we're dealing with an out-of-control federal government.
Well, I can't wait to see how this thing evolves. It's absolutely got the right leadership, and this partnership is ideal for both organizations. We're going to walk you out with this amazing launch video about the combination of Common Defense and Task Force Butler. Thanks, Kris.
Thanks a lot, brother.
Donald Trump has supercharged division and racism in our politics.
Hail Trump! Hail our people!
But you also had people, very fine people, on both sides.
See fucking high. Let's fucking go.
Social media CEOs and foreign bad actors fed the disease, spreading it unchecked to profit from the hate and anger. Now, we're living with the consequences. A culture where hate, violence, and assaults on our democracy are politics as usual. As veterans, we understand the sacrifices made to protect this country. It's devastating to see those values under attack. But we're not standing idly by. We're stepping up to defend what we fought for.
When our capital was attacked on January 6th, it wasn't the first time fascists planned a violent coup in the U.S. In 1934, Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler uncovered a plot to use veterans to overthrow democracy. He gathered evidence and took it to the public. Butler's actions stopped the plot in its tracks and exposed the conspirators.
My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe.
There's a myth that all veterans are conservative, but history tells a different story. From the abolition of slavery to the civil rights movement, veterans have always been on the front lines fighting for a better America. Common Defense was born out of that same tradition. Today, we are the nation's largest grassroots veterans organization, fighting for a country where liberty and justice truly exist for all.
A neo-Nazi group is gathering in Texas, having carefully vetted attendees to make sure footage like this doesn't exist.
Like our namesake, Task Force Butler believes in preserving our democratic institutions. We train veterans to conduct open-source intelligence investigations into extremist organizations. Our operations have targeted fascist groups like Patriot Front, NSC 131, and the Aryan Freedom Network. Our team has worked to impose legal,
Patriot Front charged with conspiracy to riot,
social,
unanimously convicted Thomas Vance Pollock,
and economic costs on their members.
The goal, to bankrupt and disrupt them.
Our mission is to hold these groups accountable.
By joining forces with Task Force Butler, we're amplifying our impact. We'll continue organizing peaceful actions while gathering intelligence to combat extremism. Together, we're making sure fascism has nowhere to hide.
This partnership empowers veterans to reshape their roles in America's political landscape.
Everyone has a plan to vote for the upcoming election.
Common Defense leads a movement of veterans committed to justice, equality, and progress. Together, we're not just defending democracy, we're going on offense for democracy.
I'm Jose Vasquez, co-founder of Common Defense.
My name is Kris Goldsmith, founder of Task Force Butler.
We've been friends for nearly 2 decades, organizing and fighting for veterans and our country.
And we couldn't be prouder to join forces at such a critical time in our nation's history.
We invite all veterans and allies to join us. Together, we can defend democracy and the values we fought for.
Visit commondefense.us and taskforcebutler.org if you want to go on offense for democracy.